How are we doing, Kansas Jayhawks fans? This is your host, Nick Rondeau, bringing you with some Jayhawks Daily content. First off, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of you who continue to tune in. If you have not subscribed already and you like Kansas college basketball content, you like college basketball content, hit that subscribe button down below. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your content. Please check them all out and follow and subscribe and give us good reviews if you like the content. And if you already have, welcome back. Today we're talking about potentially Flory flaking from Louisville. It looks like the combine is going pretty well for him. In my opinion, one improvement that we're seeing for the squad for next year, clearly, and I think, and then a little story about backing yourself, always interesting about how this team's looking, and then some roster budgets. Yes, they don't have very public information about it, but we can make inferences based on deals that we see, accumulated information, and kind of what that success rate has looked like for the NIL era. So we're going to talk about it all. Starting off with Flory flaking. So yes, Flory Bidunga is having a great combine to what people expected. He hasn't participated in the scrimmage so far. Do not believe, and his measurements came in pretty nice. And yes, Flory Bidunga, I will say as a KU fan, I didn't think he was going to leave until the day the portal opened. I always knew there was a chance that he'd go to the NBA. I always knew, he could potentially go if he had a great year, lottery type pick, super high potential, but you knew he needed to hone in on his skills first. And everyone knew he was an elite defensive player. I don't think anyone knew he was defensive player of the year good, but that potential. And everyone thought, he's got to improve his post game. Well, he kind of did that. He got good body control. Well, they thought maybe he's got to improve his handle. Well, he was showing flashes of that, so he's developing that for sure still. And he's got to stretch the floor, which that he's not really done besides, in his last game when he hits that almost three, a step in from there and just spots up and shoots it. But beyond that, he never really showed that much improvement. So I didn't think he would just go to any other school. Thought he'd stay or, maybe go to the draft. And now, what that first day in the portal, I knew he wasn't coming back. He turned, he was never looking back for sure. So, yes, it's been rumored that NIL contract with Louisville is huge, between 4 and 6 million or so. And if he's looking at his name in the draft and he's getting promises pretty highly, it's interesting. He's looking at that number. We'll say it's 5 million. We'll say it's 5. He's looking at potentially, third, 15th pick, top 15, like just lottery or just outside. That's about, the compensation you'd be getting, I believe. So he's got to get some pretty high promises to stay in. And then if not, he's just going to say, I'm going to stay one more year. I'm going to develop a lot more. I'm still going to be the same, measurable beast that they saw, which, Flory listed at 6'9". He was 6'7" and 3/4, I think. But his standing reach is about 9 feet. And his wingspan is like almost 7'5", so it's unbelievable. So that makes sense how he's blocking all these shots. But the measurables, that's what got NBA GMs a little bit of tantalized, I would say. You can really work with that. A power forward with that dominant level of skill set, but you got to be able to stretch the floor. So if he continues to have this killer combine, Louisville might be shit out of luck. You don't know, and the thing is because it seems like Louisville is ready for this. They picked up 7'5" center Gabe Dines. They got that number 1 center from 2027's class, or maybe he was number 2, but whatever it was, they got that guy to reclassify and go up early. I think they even got another guy to recruiting wise in the past 2 weeks that they picked up as a center, and then. They got that stretch 4, Alvaro Falgueras from Iowa. So they picked up some big guys to pick up the slack. I almost thinking, yeah, Flory could leave, and we don't want to be left first because he was like the first guy signed out of the portal. So they were like, well, we'll give you this big contract. It entices you to come, but we're just gonna have some insurance plans. So is Flory gonna be flaking? I don't think so. Gut tells me he'll be back in Louisville. Don't think his combine will be great enough to that'll guarantee him a top 15 pick. We're even hearing Milan Momcilovic talking about it, kind of saying, Yeah, well, you know, I'm hearing that like if I'm going to stay, he's even saying if he's like a promised a high, contract offer, high second round pick. So he's pretty excited. It seems like he's going to stay most likely, and he's like, I haven't even talked to any teams, but if I do, I'm sure someone will take me. Like, yeah, blank check, here you go. Everyone's going to do that. So it's exciting for sure to see that like that's kind of in the realm of possibility, just to see him screw over Louisville. It'd be nice. It'd be nice, but you never know. Um, Next up, kind of looking at one improvement that I see, and again, people could disagree, people could agree, whatever it may be. But I think one improvement is Keanu Dawes upgrading us at the four position, and I think Bryson Tiller is going to have a great year, and I think Bryson Tiller is going to have a pretty solid basketball future. But Bryson Tiller showed a lot of flashes last year. Flashes. That's all they were. And he was a freshman, and he wasn't one of the top guys. So it wasn't that, we weren't that offended. We understood what Bryson Tiller could do. We understood. We saw the flash. Bryson Tiller against UNC, 4 threes beginning of the year, and then not taking any for the rest of the year, pretty much. Even when he was working from inside out, hitting that, post game moves, and then working up your way to the 3-point ball. Like Arizona when he did that. Like you saw the flashes, but you also saw shrinking in big moments. You saw, lack of grabbing defensive rebounds, lack of, just finishing right around the rim at, ease. And, the guy, as funny as it may be, you'd laugh it off seeing like him try to dunk literally everything and it'd be thrown off the back glass. Like it was just terrible. But you could laugh at it and be like, well, he tried. Like you were never going to make it. But, and like, so we saw these flashes. But Keanu Dawes, I like the consistency at the offensive level. I think that's something, yes, he only averaged 12 and a half points, but he shot over 55% from the field. He shot on 3 attempts a game, over 31% from three. That's what I appreciate. That's what I like. Offensive rebounding wise, grabbing 2 a game, 8.8 in total. Like the rebounding is a huge improvement. So like if we're just going top to bottom talking about, these players, I think you're upgrading at the scoring level. I think you're upgrading at the rebounding level. You're upgrading at the 3 point, shooting level. Like I think you're upgrading in a lot of areas. I think the only one you're really giving up, I would say maybe not for sure, but most likely for sure, is defense, blocking capability. Bryson Tiller was a solid defender, was a good shot blocker, averaging 1.5 a game or so. Keanu Dawes does not exactly have that in his repertoire. He's a pretty good defender. He's active, but he's not the rim protector as much that Bryson Tiller was. But we got plenty of that. Tyron Stokes can help out there. Reeves and Paul and Bia showed flashes for sure of pinning some guys on the glass. So I like that we definitely have an upgrade there, but it's not as clear to everyone as it is to me. And I think we're all just not happy with what Bryson did. Crossing the border, going to Missouri, not exactly what everyone's cup of tea. Everyone's now rooting on his downfall, hoping he does terrible. If he does, he doesn't. I just don't want him to have a good game against us. But beyond that, I think he'll have a pretty good career. But he's going to be forced into the spotlight pretty big. He seems like he's going to be a top option or one of the top options. It seems like he wants to be, and I think he could be. But him as a third scorer is you'd be a perfect team. Like he can add so much to the team. But you just saw him shrink in moments. Big turnovers, letting the ball slip through your hands. We didn't like that. So Keanu Dawes brings, a tenured journeyman kind of personality, a veteran personality. Like, yes, Bryson Tiller would be tenured from our team, and he would have been older. But I like Keanu Dawes, learning from, starting, 2/3 of his games at Rice his freshman year, playing in 23 minutes, fine tuning his game, taking 5 shots a game, just really working on the rebounding level, working on specific things, picking up the 3-point ball a little bit more. Last year coming off the bench primarily, but shooting 60+% from the field. So he's working his game. His post moves and his rebounding percentages analytically look fantastic. So I like Dawes' potential for sure. For sure. But that's, to me, I think an upgrade. But, to each their own, and Missouri fans, I hope you saw that one. Because Bryson Tiller's good, but I don't think he's not that good. Not that good. So we'll see. We'll see. But next up is just a little story that we saw about Dennis Parker Jr. that I thought it was interesting, but also just kind of showing to, tell someone, yeah, you got to back yourself sometimes. You got to choose yourself. And, we're seeing that all over the place. We're seeing people choosing themselves, maybe future success, development, playing time. Not always money, but sometimes, and we'll see. But Dennis Parker Jr., there was multiple parts to this. And one of them I thought was interesting was, when you're getting a call and it says a person's name, but it says in parentheses maybe because it's a number you don't know. Well, that's what happened to him, but it was Bill Self on the other line. He's like, I guess I'll pick it up. It was at night, picks it up. Hey, hell, this is Bill Self? Yes, this is Coach Self. How you doing? Just hilarious start to the story, and then just informing him, hey, we really want you here. You'd be a great fit. We want you to just go out and score the ball, play some defense. You know how it is. Like we've seen your improvement. It's going to be incredible. So, and him just saying, kind of his decision to choose Kansas, because he had suitors for sure. He had suitors. Just it was good. And they asked him about his journey, and I thought this was interesting. Him speaking on his journey that led to him backing himself. About his time at previous schools and when he was doubting himself, and I quote, "It showed me that I didn't lose myself because you have doubts when you go through situations like that, like I was in my second year at NC State. You have doubts by yourself, but you ultimately remember who you are when you get back in that flow, play with freedom, just being asked to do more things." And then he's talking about a season at Radford, the more successful one, the 53-point dropping one, the one where he takes the next step forward, averages 18 points a game, and is scoring at will that season, which was just fantastic to see you develop into this character arc. It felt good, man. I felt like this season at Radford was probably the biggest that's been a part of in my college career so far. I'm highly appreciative of coaches there for granting me the opportunity so I can get out there and go back up. Like it's fantastic from to shoot right back up to understand that, yeah, it's a journey sometimes. The first stop you go at may not be the best one. And if you stay there for another year to try to make it work and it doesn't work, well, I stayed and I tried. Now I'm going to go try to succeed somewhere else. And then look where it landed him. It landed him as a key piece for a potential title contender in Kansas. And obviously, I'm biased saying title contender, but it's not ridiculous considering we are the Kansas Jayhawks. And yeah, check out that banner behind us. We're always title contenders. So Dennis Parker Jr. is not, he's just, that's how you do it. You don't give up, he's backing himself, you don't give up on yourself, and you end up in a place where you could play a pivotal role playing in March and hopefully into April. That's something every person should want to dream of. Yes, it's for an extended tournament, and yes, now it shows we need even more depth, obviously. That's for sure. But we're excited to have him. We're excited that, his journey took him to KU, and, kind of gets into our next point. Like, this is what you need. You need to have incredible depth. You need to go out and get it. And it's all because the budgets are crucial. And kind of talking about the breakdowns of how the budgets look. And like the reason we got Dennis Parker Jr. is because we know we needed more depth. We saw it last year. The top teams we talked about the other day, UConn, Michigan, they all have top dollar teams. Roster spend for sure, but like the depth they had, they're paying 8 to 10 guys. That's pretty impressive to be able to play 8 to 10 guys. Well, to play 8 to 10 guys, sometimes you gotta pay 8 to 10 guys, and that's what you see with these roster constructions. Sometimes it's top loaded. Like if we're looking at last year, some of the top teams for their spend, BYU. A lot of that money goes to A.J. DeBonsa. You saw when Saunders goes down as well, they really just have Rob Wright and DeBonsa. Kennard Davis didn't really show up. Like, they didn't have as much depth for them to show back up. So, that was a high spend, not a high reward. But, Kentucky, apparently rumored to over $20 million last year, which is just insane. And yes, they have a buzzer beater to get to round two, but round two does not go so hot, so they're not going too far. And then you got Duke allegedly at $12 million. Obviously, they did pretty well. You have Arkansas just under $12 million. They had a couple of good games, for sure. They were putting up some games. Louisville at 10.5. Louisville again, and like this goes into this year that we'll talk about as well. But Louisville last year put together a pretty decent NIL roster that no one's talking about. Like Ryan Conwell from Xavier was a pretty highly coveted guard. McNeely of Virginia was a great shooter. Like those are two of the best shooters in the portal. They grabbed them both. They got a top. I think it was at least a top 10 recruit in Michael Brown. That definitely cost them a pretty penny. Like they were not cheap to put together those lineups. And you know what they said? I'm not going to be cheap again. And so like that's the thing is the budgets this year. Hearing from Coach Hurley, hearing from Coach Miller, like Sean Miller over at Texas, like hearing from these guys, it's pretty understandable like what it takes today, not yesterday, not last year's tournament. No, no. In 2 days, this year going forward, what it takes. The elites, real big dollar spenders, that's the 20 mils. That's probably, the Dukes of the world. Seems like it's probably Louisville again, what they put together that package for Shellstat and Bidunga at 9 million, and then they get Fagueres from Iowa, that's probably another 2.5, and then they get Dines, and then they get the number one center reclassifying. Seems like they're spending a pretty penny, a couple more guards for them. Like they're they're spending a lot of money. That's the Louisville way. They've got their boosters. They're going big for it, and it makes sense. But they're up there. And then Duke just loading it back in with top 5 stars, big international prospects that are, unbelievable, turning down European money to come here. Like, that's probably, rounding it out too. And, like, I just think, like, Dan Hurley was probably more accurate than Sean Miller, saying there's at least, a dozen teams paying $20 million. I don't think that's the case. But, you know, probably, between 15 and 23 million. Yeah, and like 15, that pretty much puts us in the conversation. So it's like $20 million. Yeah, that creates the elite, roster. That's like the elite entry, you'd say. But, probably 15 million. That's the title contenders. That's what, you're hoping for. Your potential, like Texas, Sean Miller's talking about it. He's probably saying that because his team is probably worth that. David Punch could not have been cheap. Keeping Vokatia, I can never pronounce that guy's name. Keeping him, probably a pretty penny for sure. Like, there were definitely to big money for being thrown around for tension, and Texas doesn't mind because they've got a lot of money. So yeah, the elite rosters cost a lot. We're more at like the 15 range, it seems, and that's contending. That's like everybody else in our similar, scape. You probably got 8 to 10 million for your higher majors or something like that. Whatever they may be. All over the place those teams, but that's probably what you're looking at. And then yeah, maybe you're looking at your 1 to 4 or 5 as your mid majors. Your 4 million or 5 million is your really expensive mid majors. Your high points, stuff like that. But roster construction is not easy, and like what I do think is interesting, the somewhat relation to it, and we can talk about it in tomorrow's pod, but is the retention to success ratio, and sometimes yes, dollars keep retention. To keep that continuity, sometimes got to pay for that continuity. Like that's just what happens sometimes. So speaking to that, high continuity, a team there's a 74% chance of their win percentage if you retain 4 starters. Like that's sometimes like it just shows like that is there's a high success rate that you get to the Sweet 16 at average with returning 4 starters. Yeah, you could be the UNC and return 4 starters and not make the NCAA tournament, but typically, you see the Michigans of the world, you see the UConns, like these guys return and they succeed and they push. Like that's what Illinois is doing. They're going high retention rate. Or you go like us and you just pick and you grab and you look for anything available. So it's all over the place. It costs a lot of money to get into the race, to be able to play. We'll see where we're going to be at because we're not paying top dollar, but we're paying a decent amount of money, and we'll probably continue to stay in that conversation going forward. So we'll see. We will see where Kansas lands on the spectrum at the end of this year of top dollar spent, mid dollar spent, whatever it may be, and success. Just hoping for that success. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Flory's combine results. Keanu Dawes over Bryson Tiller. Who would you prefer? What do you think about that Dennis Parker Jr. story and just his story itself? You excited as I am? And then talk about rosters. What do you think dollars being spent are around? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Very much appreciate the support. Subscribe if you haven't on any platform. And rock chalk. Go Jayhawks.